Hey everyone, it's day 2 of the Bronco Build. You know, ever since I was a little kid, what represented a cool off-road vehicle besides the big wheels was the light bar. I like the sleek look of the KC Highlights Pro 6 light bar, where it's kind of lowered on the windscreen a bit, but I always felt like there were too many. And then I saw the RTR light bar for the Bronco, which looks perfect to me. 5 lights, 3 spots in the middle, 2 floods on either end, sleek and lowered like the KC Highlights light bar. That's what we're going to install today. Welcome to the Never Ending Weekend. If you've seen my day 1 Bronco video, you know I love pulling cable. And considering this is a light project, there's a lot of pulling cable. Just like the other video, I'm not going to go through a full install, but I'll stop along the way if I find any problems or issues. The RTR manual that comes with the light bar is pretty comprehensive, so I don't foresee any problems, but we'll see. Taking a page from that American philosopher that said, "We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." I've decided to lay out my tools so that they're easily accessible and I don't have to search around looking for things. We got the drill, 1/8 and 5/16 drill bits, a heat gun, bullet level, electrical tape, a 7mm, 8mm, and 10mm sockets, and 20 and 30 Torx, ratchets, a 13mm wrench, a deburring tool, a crimper wire cutter, and screwdrivers to pry panels. So let's start the install. This is the first time I'm prying back panels in a car. I was a bit worried that I was gonna break something or bend something permanently. I still feel like some of the panels aren't fitting back exactly perfectly, but I decided to just trust the panels would flex as much as I needed them to. I was a little apprehensive about drilling into the sheet metal. It's just so permanent. There's supposed to be a dimple where you can place your drill bit, but it's more like a nipple. It bumps out, so it was kind of hard to make the pilot hole. I didn't want to introduce unwanted moisture inside one of the internal cavities of the body, which I'll talk about a little bit later at the end of the video. I have a bit of OCD and I tend to over tighten things. This is where a torque wrench is perfect for me, but more about that as well later in the video. Whenever I'm screwing down nuts, my OCD kicks in. This is nice and tight and torqued down. I like to do things in steps, and I'll make an assembly line of sorts. So I'll finish one part, then go to the next, but this often leads me into trouble because if I go the wrong direction like I did here, I have to undo a lot of things, which takes time. Much better. The Project X FF70 lights are really nice. I like them a lot. I have a question about this LED strip inside the light. It almost looks like they advertise it as a running light, but I can't figure out for the life of me how that works. I've sent out an email to Project X, but if anyone knows how or what these LED lights are for, leave a note in the comments. One last final connection in the engine bay to attach the wiring harness that Ford pre-wired throughout the Bronco. They did a really good job wiring all the connection points to the different parts of the car so that they are easy to find and connect and match up to the auxiliary switches from the factory. One thing to note, this I thought was a cap or some protective cover, but it's part of the assembly. So don't try to pry it off like I did. because you need 2 people to lift this light bar up and place on the brackets, make sure that the wiring harness ends are accessible. Otherwise, you'll be trying to pick them out from under the light bar once it's down. Okay, we're on the last couple of steps, and per the instructions, I'm supposed to tighten down those bolts while this is in place. And I really don't see that as realistic, but let's try. So you didn't have to turn the nuts that much. Even though it was a tight fit, it wasn't that bad. A couple of turns. One of the last turns, the wrench kind of got away from me and tapped the sheet metal, but other than that, it went pretty good. From the top, there's a lot of space. It was just the bottom one that was a little bit more precarious. The instructions don't tell you to remove both visors, but it's probably a good idea to do it, just because it's easier to pull back the covers to access the wires. Also, it might be easy when you're taking this out, it might be easy to understand what it looks like. So when you pull it out, you understand how it's clipped in like a U into the panel. So just a couple of updates. I had the light bar on for about a week now, and when I was installing it, after I drilled the hole, the wiring harness was thick enough that it pretty much filled the hole, and then the brackets went on top, and I was wondering about water leakage, but assumed there were so many layers on top that that wouldn't be a problem. And there's no mention in the manual about filling that hole. But we had a pretty quick but heavy rainstorm come through, and I noticed some water at the passenger sun visor. And I immediately thought there was a problem with the hard top, but then realized, oh, it's probably from the hole that I drilled for the light bar. So I took the light bar back down and plugged it with some silicone. I mean, it's a little problematic because it's the only part of the install that needs 2 people to lift that light bar up, but I did that to safeguard any water entering the internal cavity of the window frame. Also, one thing to note is the powder coat on the outside of the light bar itself. When I retightened the bolts for the light bar onto the bracket after I filled the hole with silicone, the outer coating of the light bracket cracked when I was tightening down the bolts. Now, I may have over-tightened them, so I'm not going to say it's an RTR issue, but I don't feel like I over-tightened them too much so that each area where there's a bolt, it cracked and chipped. It's almost more like a paint than a powder coat, but something to keep note of.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So I finished in the nick of time, just before it got dark. There it is. I still have to adjust the lights. So just like installing the step sliders gave me a newfound respect for mechanics, this gave me a newfound respect for electricians. Contorting my body and getting in tight spaces was uncomfortable, but it went a lot more smoothly than the last mod I did. The directions from RTR were pretty comprehensive, so that went well. And I love the look of the lights. They look great. So stay tuned for the next modification to the Bronco, and until next time, have a great weekend.